Hey, everybody, welcome back. I'm excited for today. I've got a new friend of mine, Erik Allen. And just so I can tell you a little bit about Erik, Erik is an entrepreneur. He's got his own podcast, The Erik Allen Show, which you're going to want to go and check out. He's got his company, Erik Allen Media, and we're going to talk all about that. And I know one of the things that you're passionate about, Erik, is really helping people with podcasts. And
Yeah.
I love it. I know how much it's benefited my life. So I'm so excited to be bringing this to our audience. And guys, just to give you context too with Erik, I mean, he's had some big names on his show. I'm just going to name three for you right off the bat, but he's had Brad Lee on his show. Many of you watching and listening follow Brad. He's had David Meltzer, who, as you guys know, is a huge name in the business space, one of my mentors too. And then, of course, in my opinion, the GOAT, Ed Milet, has also been on his show. And I know all of you know Ed. So Erik, I'm super excited to have you on the show today, man. Thanks for being here.
Oh, dude, such an honor, man. I so appreciate having me on the show. I'm excited for our conversation today, man.
Yeah, me too. I remember just that first day we connected. Erik and I got connected through a different mastermind group. And just even that day we got on the phone and the tips you gave me right away, I've appreciated right off the bat how helpful you were. So thank you for that.
Absolutely, Ben.
Oh, I got to tell you, I didn't tell you this before, but just landed through that strategy. Just got a great guest that should be coming on. I got Dave Asprey, who I've looked up to in biohacking for a long time. So thank you.
Come on, man. That's awesome, dude. Right on, man.
Yeah. So I love starting the show with this idea story and people getting to know you, about you. Where have you been? Where have you come from? How did you end up where you are now? I think is a powerful place for us to start.
Yeah, man. My gosh, hopefully we only got 40 minutes. Okay, cool. No, I mean, I grew up in a place called Washington State is where I grew up in, and typical household, little league, Sunday school. You know, my dad would take my best friend Dave and I literally throw us in dumpsters behind stores on the weekends and say, go find treasure. Like that was what he loved to do, is just go find other stuff, man.
Literally throw you in dumpsters?
Totally. Yeah. We go to like big, huge grocery stores or big, huge retail stores, and they'd have those big dumpsters in the back. You'd be like, lift us into the back and toss us little kids in there and then go find treasure. Like we would just go digging. It was so much fun as a young kid to do that. Like he would take us out to like the middle of nowhere where people would just dump stuff, and we'd go find fridges and bullet casings, and it was awesome. Didn't everybody do that? I mean, no one else got tossed in the covers. I don't know. So, I'm 11 years old. My parents decide to get a divorce. I have no idea why. My mom gets together with a guy who's very physically abusive almost right away. I remember there was moments where I was like outside the house looking through the bedroom window, and I would see him hitting her with a cordless phone when those were around, and like I would call the cops. My mom would never press charges. And they did the smart thing. They got pregnant and decided to move us from Washington State up to Stevensville, Montana. It was population 1,200 people. And they rented this house on 5 acres by the Bitterroot River. It was beautiful, man. 5 ponds or 2 ponds on the property. The problem was the house had 3 bedrooms. So it was one for them. It was one for my little brother who's a couple months old at the time. And then one for my younger sister who's 4 years younger than me. And they said, Erik, you can live in the garage. So I literally had this plastic tarp down the middle of the garage, and my bed was on one half. The truck pulled into the other side. Luckily, my half of the garage had a fireplace. It would keep me semi-warm in the middle of those winters of Montana. And the abuse continued, man. There was one night that really just changed the trajectory of my life for about 10 years. I was about 13 years old, brushed my teeth one night. They came home arguing. Wasn't anything different than any other night. And as I was brushing my teeth, I felt God go, man, you got to turn around and see what's going on. Because they came home arguing. I turned around. The way the house was set up was behind me was the kitchen to the pantry to the garage door where my bedroom was at. And so as I look around, I see this guy on top of my mom, just one shot off the boom, boom, boom. I'm like, man, I got to stop this dude. And so I walked up and I grabbed a cast iron pan and I swung as hard as I could and I split the back of his head open. And he turned around, it didn't knock him out. He said, what then? As he did that, I took another swing and split his forehead open. And I remember that second time that I hit him so hard, I'd fallen over, and he stood up over me. He was bleeding down his face. My mom jumps up, lands like 6 punches in a row, like, mama bear style. Cops show up, take him to jail. My mom doesn't press charges. I'm thinking I'm like the hero in this. And I had 3 months left of my freshman year, a little bit after that. I got kicked out. So my mom and this guy decided to say, hey, you're out of this house. So I went and lived with my buddy, and I slept on hardwood floors with him and his dad. And we'd steal cigarettes out of his dad's pack on the way to school every morning. Right. And like, that's what set me on this path to destruction. After that, I went to go live with my dad in Washington. He rented a house for him and I, and put $20 in the cup for lunch money, stuffed the freezer with Hunger Man meals. And then I'd see my dad a couple of times in passing. He would go stay with his girlfriend most of the time. So I got into drugs early. I was partying. I got arrested at 18 for having a bong, which now looking back, I'm like, in 1998, it was illegal, but I'm like,
Yeah,
now it's legal, right? So I'm like, I
that's
got
right.
arrested for having a bong, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
black and white chain gang outfit on. I mean, craziness. I was still in high school when I got arrested.
Wow.
And 2 weeks after I graduated, my dad kicked me out. I woke up to a post-it note that said, you have 48 hours to get out, and basically put me on this homeless path for
A
like 2
post-it?
years.
You woke up to a post-it?
Literally a post-it note on the bathroom mirror said, you can't comply with house rules. You have 48 hours to get out. And so from there, I moved 21 times between the age of 18 and 21. I was living on a floor here for a week there, 4 days here, etc. Make the move to Seattle, living off of credit cards. And by the time I was 21, I was $28,000 in debt and had to file bankruptcy.
Mm.
So meanwhile, I'm battling addiction. So I'm like doing every drug I could think of. I'm living a rock star lifestyle, literally worked for the Universal Records. So I was going to 2 to 3 concerts a week, hanging out backstage, living the rock star lifestyle. And then around 2003, I got laid off during the days of Napster, if people remember that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Totally killed the music industry. And I was the bottom guy on the totem pole, right? So,
Yeah.
but that really set me into a depression, man. I was working at Starbucks one night, and this girl walked up to me and said, hey, we've got this cool college age event down at our church. Would you be interested in going? I'm depressed. I have no friends. She's good looking. Yep. What time do I need to be there? That was what's going through my head.
Yeah.
And I really felt like God put a seed in me in that moment, man. Cause I ran into some guys there that I hadn't seen 4 or 5 years. And it's like, man, what are you doing here? And this is up in Seattle. So I'd moved to the other side where I grew up. And about a month later, it was Easter 2004. Woke up after a night of partying, man. And it was Easter morning, like I said, and woke up and felt God say, you're going down this path that's going to end your life, man. And so I did decide in that moment, I gave my life to Christ right there in my buddy's basement. And I quit cold turkey, drugs, drinking cigarettes, everything that moment.
No way.
And I called that girl up. I got her voicemail. And I said, hey, thanks for inviting me to that church event. Maybe I'll see you at the store sometime. And in about 2 weeks, me and that girl will celebrate 18 years of being married now.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So that was the pre-story before any of the business stuff, but that's kind of what got me to the path where I'm on today.
I want to know, obviously at the time it's so different. And then as you reflect back on those times, thank you for sharing so openly too.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest lessons that you now carry with you into the rest of your life that you took from those times?
The biggest thing for me, man, was I realized that my past and other people's opinions of me do not define my future.
Yeah.
And once I decided that and realized that, that's when the doors of opportunity just blew open. I was like,
Yes.
dude, I'm not going to live in that past. It's in the past. It's over with. I can't change it, but I can change who I am today, and I can impact other people. And now I'm 43 right now. I didn't share that story publicly till I was 39. I held that inside forever, man. Like I went to counseling after we were first married, trying to figure out like, why am I dealing with this stuff? Right. Like, but once I had that realization, that helped me get on the right path. And the other thing that I did to kind of get on the right path was I replaced the party scene, and I started seeking guys that were going to the church that had great businesses. They had great marriages. They had great walks with Christ, and pre-podcasting days, right? I was like, let me take you to coffee. I want to know your story. What are you doing right now to do what you're doing? And that really helped guide me on this path that I'm on today.
That's amazing, man. That's so amazing. I think it's so incredible to hear everything that happened. And when you're going through it, I mean, you're just going through it. You don't think of it being much different. This is my life experience, right?
Totally.
And I remember some things growing up for myself, not to that degree, but some things that were traumatic at the time. I didn't think of them that way though, right?
Yeah.
And but that lesson that you took is that, my past doesn't define me, and letting that go. I think that everybody listening has some kind of demons. Everybody listening has things that they would have rather been different ways than how they are.
Yeah.
And to hear you say that, and all right, I'm letting that go. I can change from this point onward. Yeah. I think that message is needed more than ever today, brother, because so many people are wanting a different life than how they've been. They're wanting different experiences than what they've had up to this point, but then hanging on to the past. So
too many people playing that victim card, man, and they just hold on to it for too long.
Yes. There's the decision. I know that's the ultimate point, is where you just decide I'm no longer going to do it. What else would you say to someone that's listening saying, yes, my past was tough too. I just haven't let it go. Maybe some other advice on how they can perhaps get through it. There's the immediate one. Just do it, right? Just
do it. Right. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing that I had to do was I had to change my environment. I had to get out of that party scene. I had to get away from that group of guys that I was hanging with. Now, those guys, I called them up and I said, dudes, I got to get healthy. I got to take a break.
Mm.
And they're like, dude, absolutely get healthy. Those guys are still my friends today. But I
Wow.
had to take a time about 6-7 months where I didn't go to the bar, I didn't party or anything like that. I just solely focused on getting a better me, right? Like I had to deep dive into that. And like I said, I changed the environment. I started hanging around guys that were living the life that I wanted to live. And Ed Milet talks about this, right? Like you're walking around at 82 degrees. You got to go find guys that are walking around at 120.
That's right.
And so that's what I did was I changed the environment. I started seeking guys that were living the life that I wanted to live. Guys that had great marriages, they had great businesses, they were great entrepreneurs, right? They were great, had great relationships with Christ. Like for me, that was my goal. And that's what I would say, man. If you're struggling, you realize that your past is not who you are today, change your environment, get uncomfortable and put yourself in situations where you can grow and you can connect with people that are living the life that you want to live.
It's amazing, man. That's some of the best advice you could ever give somebody. Change the environment. Last week when I was down in Vegas there for that trip, I felt so stretched, uncomfortable, everything. And I happened to be there for 2 days. And the first day was, man, it was a big growth day, but it allowed me to reflect and think, okay, I'm going to show up differently tomorrow. Because to your point, when you get around people that live life at a higher temperature, you get around people that live life at higher levels, it causes you to think differently. You start feeling in different ways, and it ultimately causes you to act. So
totally.
It's amazing, dude. So all of that. So that's kind of like the early backstory. Now you've got your media company, you got your podcast, and I'm super excited to talk about this because I've never had someone on the show to talk about podcasting. And I know that's your passion right now. It's where you're helping. Tell us about the media company, and then let's dive into podcasting.
Yeah, Erik Allen Media, it's been around for a while. Like it started out as a MMA apparel company back in 2012. I launched and then got bored with it. Started an MMA podcast in 2017. Did 256 episodes of that show before turning it off in December of 2021. But in 2018, I came across a guy named Ed Milet online while I was doing motivation. While I was looking for motivational videos on YouTube, and I was like, "Holy crap, man! This guy's values, his beliefs, everything is aligning with me." And I was like, dude, I want to meet this guy. And I almost was kind of manifesting that. I was like, dude, this guy. And I started starting at his very first video he ever uploaded on YouTube. I just followed all of them. Right. And I started following my Instagram. He had about 1 million followers. It was near the end of 2018. He issued this challenge. He said, I want everybody to do a max out community challenge. I want you to record a 1-minute video of what drives you to be successful. Why do you want to be successful? And post it in Instagram on your stories and tag me on it. And so I did this. I had no idea what I was doing, right? I'm just like, this is why I want to do it. I want to change the lives. I'm breaking the chains of abuse, addiction, rejection, and divorce. And I'm just not going to happen in my life. So that was my pitch in that video. And he kept posting all these things like, oh, here's top runner. And then all of a sudden, boom, I wake up one morning to a notification that I was tagged by Ed Milet and I won the contest, which landed me the phone call with Ed.
That's amazing.
Erik Allen Media, it started that way, right? And then now I do box openings and how-to videos and explainer videos for brands. Actually, Fiverr has been one of my favorite, most profitable platforms that I use.
Fiverr,
yeah, dude. And I get sponsors for my podcast from there. I get tons of clients. They send me all these products, and then I do these videos for them. It's not like I'm retirement money, but I've made about $6,000 from Fiverr in the last 2 years. So it's just a couple hundred, few $100 a month. And it helps me, pay for the podcast and all the equipment stuff. Right. That's just one of my probably 7 or 8 different profit platforms that I have. Right. So that's what Erik Allen Media is. I do voiceover, lots of YouTube videos, things like that. So yeah, that's the media side of things.
I love it, man. You got a great voice, by the way. So,
thank you.
Yeah, that's so cool. Well, let's talk podcasting. And I'm excited to dive into this stuff. And like I mentioned, everybody, when I first met Erik and even talking to him, he was sharing with me and teaching me stuff. I'd already been doing this for 2 years. And so I know you got a wealth of knowledge on that. But why don't we start with the idea of why podcasting?
Podcasting, man, is for me, it's turned into my purpose. This is my legacy, man. I was like we were chatting earlier. I would love to go back and hear my great grandfather speak. I'd love to hear his voice, see his energy. And we're in a day and age where in technology, I can do this video. I can record my voice. I can get on camera and I can share it with people, or I can just record it and keep it on a file on my computer. But 3, 4, 5, 6 generations deep, they can go back and see me on that video. They can hear my voice, right? So I'm a big proponent in doing a podcast, one, just to share our story. And you don't have to have some crazy trauma in your story.
Right.
You could have not ever done a drug in your life, And that's an amazing testimony, right?
Totally.
Like share that, right? But I think if we can share that story either out or just record it and put it on our camera, it gives our future generations a chance to come back and hear our voice. So I'm a big proponent of doing podcasting. And I mean, not only that, like the legacy is the number one thing I think for me, but it's so many relationships and opportunities and business partners and partnerships and sponsorships that come out of this. I get to meet awesome people like yourself. Podcasting has opened up the door. Some of my best friends in the world are people that were a guest on my podcast.
Amazing. That's amazing, man. I love it so much. I think that's so great. When I had started mine, we hadn't shared this, but I knew one day, because speaking in seminars was always my dream and vision. And I knew one day I was going to, and it just seemed like that would be a good place to start. So I started, but I had no idea, all the things you just shared, I had no idea how much was going to come from starting a podcast. No idea. So, I mean, as we share more of this, everybody, like Erik's going to give you ideas on how you can do this. And I'm a big fan, obviously, of it.
Thank you. Yeah, dude. I mean, I had no idea what I was doing when I started, man. I was in a walk-in closet, right? You know, like snowball mic, using the camera on my laptop and horrible lighting, right? Like I'm running 100-foot cable from one plug-in on the outside of my room and into the outlet or into the closet, right? Because there's no plug-ins, right? That's how I ran everything, man.
Yeah, that's funny, man. It's funny. So that's the reason for you. That's why.
Yeah.
And, let's talk a little bit about this, because I think there's also, I mean, many people listening are entrepreneurs. To give you an idea of the background, they're executives, they're entrepreneurs. How have you found, you mentioned connections, how have you found just even how this has impacted your business life? Talk a bit about that.
Huge. It builds up credibility, man. I mean, I think if you can show people that you're connecting with people, that's huge credibility piece. But number two, it also gets you out of your shell, right? There's a lot of people that have come on my podcast that I would never run into on a daily basis, right? Like 100%. I would never have the opportunity to talk to guys like Ed Milet or Bradley or David Meltzer, right? Unless I had a podcast.
Yep.
So if I have this podcast, it gives me an opportunity to go and share their story and get to know them a little bit more. But it's also kind of like, I want to bring them value. I want to share with the world their story, their products, their courses, right? Their seminars, right? That gives me an opportunity to touch base with them and expand into other opportunities, partnerships, things like that. So it's more than just the legacy stuff. It's so much of a relationship side of things. And it's helped me in my business. Doors have opened, opportunities, voiceover has happened, sponsorships have happened. You know, Bradley's been on my podcast, but I've also been a guest on Dropping Bombs. Like I flew down to Vegas to be a guest on his show.
So cool.
You know, it's huge. I think podcasting is just massive for any business, and it's the cheapest way to market your brand.
There you go. Yeah. I love it, man. I love it. So say I'm listening, I say, hey, sounds really good. And I know, just because I was that guy. Well, there's people listening that have had the thought, I should start one.
Yeah.
And then they also get the thoughts, who am I? Who's going to listen? All that stuff, right? I mean, you know exactly what that's like.
Totally.
Starting out. So what advice would you give to people when maybe that's them, they've thought, I have the idea of, or now they're listening thinking that's a good idea. Maybe I should. Talk a bit about that.
Man, you just got to go for it. Here's the thing is so many people like the idea of having a podcast, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who are like, I would love to do this. And then I think the latest statistic that I saw was 90% of podcasts that start never make it past episode 7.
No way.
So look, if you're going to start a podcast or podcast, go all in and just don't stop. You'll be successful as long as you keep going.
Right.
You know, I've now done released over 450 episodes since I started this thing.
Amazing.
And, you know, even if you don't know what you're like, want to talk about, like you're passionate about something, there's going to be something out there. Someone out there is going to go, man, I really like quilting. Okay, cool. I'm going to do a podcast on quilting, right? There's so many people out there that are waiting to hear from you, man. Your message should be shared with the world, no matter what that is. Whatever, if you have the perfect life, man, that's an awesome story. Go share that out with people. You're going to connect with people. Right. So it's such a great opportunity to market your brand. You can do it for free. You know, but I would say, look, if you want to, I've got a course right now for $47. Nice. I walk you through exactly how to start, launch, and run your podcast. And included in that $47, I'm going to give you 2 weeks of promotion on my podcast to promote your podcast.
No way. That's awesome.
I'm giving that away. It's a 28 video course that I recorded. It's on my website. and it's
Cool.
only like an hour and a half, maybe of video, but there's
Yeah.
I walk you through exactly how to set up your podcast, where you should promote that, what groups to get on other podcasts, tell you exactly how I get the big names on my show. And then I'm going to promote your podcast for 2 weeks on my podcast.
That's amazing, man. Well, there you heard it. Listen, if you're looking at getting started, I mean, there's your we'll put that in the show notes, of course, and the link for all that stuff. Let's give Erik, let's give of course they should go and get the course if they're serious about it. Let's give maybe a few highlight tips that you want to share with people. Say they've either A, I've decided I'm going to do it, or B, perhaps I've started. Give a couple tips on what you've learned and, hey, I would be doing this if I was you.
Yeah. So if you're looking to start, I would say record at least 5 to 8 episodes before you launch. Have a queue of it built up. I did not do that. And it leads to an inconsistent release schedule, and people need that consistency. My show drops every Friday, 7 a.m. Pacific.
Yeah.
Right. And when I first started, it was like, oh, here's one. And then 4 weeks later, I might do one. 3 weeks later, have a queue built up. And then you don't feel that pressure of like, oh my gosh, I got 5 days. I got to put another one together. Like, build that queue up, give yourself some breathing room. Number two,
just to interrupt for a sec. I wish I would have done that when I started too. I did the opposite of the advice you're giving, kind of like
totally. I did too.
And it was everybody 100% build it up, right? Have a bit of queue. I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
I would also say, don't look at the numbers. I never looked at the download numbers for 4.5 years after doing my podcast. People would go, well, how many downloads you got? I could care less. I'm doing podcasting because I love it. And I love the relationships. Right. And I still don't really look at numbers. Like every once in a while, I might go peek at them, but that's about it. Like I don't get hung up on like, oh man, that episode only had 20 downloads. Right. Like I just love the conversation. So don't get hung up on the numbers, build up your queue, have a good, like, you don't have to spend a lot of money, but I would say have headphones, like have a good mic. And if you're going to do video, have a decent camera. You can use your FaceTime, your built-in camera on your website if you want, on your laptop. But you can get like a Logitech camera online for $50, right? Like that's totally fine. Do that. And then I would just say like, be consistent. Right. So be consistent on your releases, on your podcast episode logo, like your album cover, right? Put your face on there. Right. People want to get personalized for you. When they're not sure of what your podcast is about, they're going to try to make a personal connection with your face by looking at the cover. And if your cover doesn't have your face on it, they're going to go, well, that's just something else, right? Like they're not going to have this personal connection with that podcast. So put your face on your podcast cover.
That's amazing, man. Those are all phenomenal tips right there. And I look at, some of the mistakes I made is that even those first few tips are, one, I didn't have episodes ready. So I was super inconsistent in the beginning. I even had a period where I would never recommend this. I even had a period where I didn't do anything for 3 months. I mean, it was, so that didn't work out too well, of course, mistakes. And then that idea of that consistency of building that muscle. And so it took me a couple of years to learn that. I do the same. I release every Monday, same time, everything now. But what Erik's saying is amazing advice. I did have my picture on the logo. That was one thing I did right in the beginning for sure.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I didn't when I first started. So like I changed it up. But yeah, I mean, my top rated one I didn't, but this one I did. But I would say the other thing too is as you're starting this thing out, you're gonna make mistakes. Like it's okay to suck. You're gonna suck at first, man. Yeah. And I'll tell you a funny story real quick. Is the day that I talked to Ed Milet, 2 hours before that, I talked to Ken Shamrock. So talk about a crazy day, right? Like Ed was my 12th episode for the Erik Allen Show, right? And then I'm talking to Ken Shamrock. But here's the thing. I literally get on this call with Ken Shamrock, and I was recording via eCam, I think at the time. And so he's dialing in from his phone. He kept getting texts during my interview. Yeah. And every time that he got a text, it turned my recorder off. And I was
no way.
And I was like 2 minutes in, I was like, hey, Ken, I'm really sorry, man. For some reason, the recorder turned off. I'm just going to turn it back on. He's like, okay, cool. So I do that. I continue the interview. About 7 minutes in, I look down. That recorder is turned off at some point. I have no idea. And I'm just going, at this point, I'm having this great conversation with Ken and no one's going to hear it. Like, I'm like, this is ridiculous. I'm sweating bullets, right? Like stuff's going to happen, man. Yeah. The cool thing was his team reached out to me and said, hey, how'd the interview go? And I was like, oh man, it was good. But I think he kept getting texts. And for some reason, my recorder turned off. And they're like, okay, cool. Let's just book him for another one. I was like, what?
Nice.
Super cool. But like that first time, like for me, like I was kind of starstruck by Ken Shamrock anyways. And then I was like, stirred it up. And I was like, oh, this sucks, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. That's too funny, man. That's too funny. Yeah. I want to share too with everybody, you know, if you've been thinking about it or you're listening right now to Erik saying, okay, good idea, I'm going to do it. Just do it. And if I could highlight what Erik said too, is you're unsure, whatever you're passionate about. Yeah. What do you love? Right. I mean, that's the stuff that you talk to people about anyways. It's the thing you're most interested in anyways. And like Erik said, I mean, in a planet this big, you probably got millions of other people that are interested in the same stuff you're interested in.
Totally.
Right.
Totally. The other big thing too, and you and I are doing it right now, is we're going to do a show swap. Get yourself on other people's podcasts, right? Like that's the biggest way to promote your show.
Right.
In 2020, I set a goal to be a guest on 50 podcasts. I only did 26. Okay. I was like, that is stupid, man. Like I only did 26. So 2021, I go, I'm gonna do 100. And I'm like, there's no stopping me. In 2021, I also had 2 podcasts at the time. So I was going to release 100 episodes of my own podcast and be a guest on 100 episodes in 2021. I ended the year doing 117 other interviews on other people's podcasts and releasing 100 of my own. And almost every day of the year of 2021, I was either recording a podcast on my own or be a guest on someone. So man, just the way to build up your podcast is be a guest on other people's podcasts.
Perfect. Perfect. If you're getting scared by that, you don't need to do 100 your first year. Erik's been crushing it for a while, right? And that's why he did that. But get started. You know, I remember, Erik, a friend of mine had reached out to me. She goes, hey, have you ever thought about doing a podcast? And I said, yeah, I thought about it. I'm not going to take the time. I don't think I want to. She goes, no, I think you really should. It'd be great. I mean, I think a lot of people would listen. And I said, okay, whatever. And then she reaches out again a few months later about the same idea. And I think maybe it was August. I don't know. This is 2020. I guess it would have been 20 or 21, somewhere in there. And I said, you know what? I'm going to do it. So I buy the mic, get my Blue Yeti. You know, I buy my little box that I needed for everything. Sat over here on my shelf, the bottom of the shelf here for months. Didn't do anything. And I kept looking at it because I walked down my office and here I might see this little thing. And then one day I was like, man, screw this. Do it. Hit record.
Come on.
And that was my first episode. And that got me started. So for everybody too, Erik said it earlier, and I want to just, hey, if you like the idea, just start, right? Just start, you know, get the first one going. You'll get better, right? You'll get better for sure. I want to switch gears, but it's in the same thing. But I think this will help people too. And whether they want to start a podcast or not, I think it helps business people. I think it's a communication skill. What have you learned about connecting and interviewing people? And maybe let's talk a little bit of tips on some of that stuff.
Yeah. You know, I mean, interviewing at first, when I started getting the bigger names on my show, I was kind of like, I mean, let me back up. I kind of got starstruck when I was in the music business. I met a lot of guys. So I kind of got those jitters out, but it was a whole nother realm meeting these entrepreneur guys that I was like, oh my gosh, like these guys are the big guys. Podcasting though, when I interview folks, I want my listeners to understand the people I'm interviewing, they were all kids once. They all grew up, whether it was a crazy childhood or a great childhood, but they made decisions in their life that got them to where they're at today.
Yeah.
Whether there was a bad decision and they got out of it. I mean, David Meltzer losing $100 million, like crazy, but then look at now, right? So I think the tip that I like to do when I'm interviewing people is I love to highlight their story. I want to understand the failures. I want to understand what they did to get to where they're at, what piqued their interest down this path that they're on today. What's their message to the world? Like, I want to do everything that I can to promote them. Like, I'm just the guy who's to help get them to share their stuff. Right. And if I can ask good questions, then I can keep that conversation going. I've had conversations or guests on my show where I'm like, that was the most boring interview I've ever done, period. Like, I'm like 1-2 word answers. I'm like, okay, all right, we're done. Cool. Thanks, man. Like, I'm like, you make those mistakes, right? Like, but you know, it's just, I think if I can ask them prompting questions that will get them to talk about themselves, because people like to talk about themselves, like me right now, right? Like, then it'll make for a great conversation.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And I think that what you're teaching right there is 100%. It's just a great life skill.
Yeah.
Is getting to it. You know, I was reading Meltzer's book recently, and I've heard the phrase many times, but he says it so many times in his book, Connected to Goodness. And he says, be interested rather than interesting. And I think that's what you're teaching.
Yeah,
right?
totally. And I've struggled with that, right? Because I'm a talker. I love to get out there. I'm like, oh, no, no, no. My wife's like, hey, you should probably shut up for a minute, right? Like, like, I'm like, you're over talking. Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I got to take a step back. Oh, let me hear your story now, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I love it, man. I love it. Hey, let's do this. Let's, while we're talking about, let's get people where they can connect with you. We'll get them. Of course, there's your website, but social as well. So tell me about that.
Yeah, erikallenmedia.com. It's just ErikAllen. So erikallenmedia.com. You can find my blog, my website, or excuse me, my YouTube channels, all my social medias on there. My podcast is on there.
Podcast course too.
Podcast course. I have a ton of free resources on my website. So
okay, cool.
On my that was one thing that I wanted to do was really help people in podcasting, but not only podcasting, just like some fun stuff, right? So I do have the course on there to help them launch a podcast. I also have a podcast booking agency. So if you're looking to get on podcasts, I will help you get booked on there.
That's amazing.
So, I do that as well, but I give 10 tips to help you launch a successful podcast. That's a free download that you can get from my website. I list all of the equipment that I buy, all the platforms that I buy, all the books that I read. I list on there so you can go grab those books. They're books that impacted my life. And I have a fun money section that I'm going to teach you all. I show you all these platforms that I make money from, and I'm just giving it to you on my website. So definitely go check it out.
Go check out the website. 100%. Right. On social, which one are you most active on?
Instagram for sure. So it's just Erik G. Allen. Again, Erik and then G. Allen. I'm definitely most active on there. YouTube is starting to build up. I do a lot of shorts. So I do a daily or 2 daily shorts usually where I'm just quoting something or I'll, share something fun. But growing that channel up right now too.
Cool, man. I love it. I love it. My last question for you, switching gears as we're wrapping up today in our time.
Yeah.
Is all the interviews you've done, all the people you met, everything, just like I asked you earlier, what were the life lessons you learned from your upbringing? What have now been the lessons that have stuck with you the most out of, as you think about everything you've learned over that time, what have been some of the most impactful ones?
Man, so I had Dr. Greg Reed on my show. He wrote the book 3 Feet from Gold, which was the follow-up to Think and Grow Rich, right? Amazing man. That interview landed me an opportunity to go to his house for an event called Prosperity Camp. And Prosperity Camp is where it's an invite only, and there's only 50 people that are allowed to go. And I got there and there was 49 millionaires. I'm the one, right? Like all these big people. I met Dan Fleischman there. I met Kelly Cardenas, all these other guys. And I was kind of like walking into something like I had no idea what I was doing. And me and Kelly just hit it off. And so I flew back down about 6 months later to go to Prosperity Camp again. And Kelly said, hey, I live by the beach. Come watch the sunrise with me. I was like, cool. So I go sit on the beach with Kelly. We're reading our Bibles. We're doing some journaling. We're just kind of meditating on the ocean. I live in Idaho, so I don't see the ocean. So I'm like, man, this is amazing. And I was telling Kelly, I'm like, man, one of my dreams is to just go full on entrepreneur, quit with the fear. I have to quit being scared. And he said, Erik, we're here at Prosperity Camp. Everybody's amazing people. He goes, of the 50 people there that are really successful in money, how many of them have great families? And I had to take a step back and go, man, of those 50 that I met, how many of them have been divorced and have broken marriages? And they might be successful in money, but they might not have great relationships with their kids or their families. And Kelly just spoke so much life into me in that moment. And so, man, it was like taking a step back and going, put your family first, the money will come. But for me, that was an eye opener for me because I was chasing money. I was chasing like all the success. And Kelly sat me down. He goes, man, you got a beautiful wife. You got some beautiful children. Pursue them. And then the profits will come, man. And like the money will come. The happiness is with your family. Don't put the entrepreneurship first. Put your family first, man. And that was really eye opening for me, man. It was a huge moment in my entrepreneur path.
100%. Yeah, I love that. It's amazing. I mean, it is easy to get caught up in just pursuing the dollar and just pursuing that. And if you lost the most important stuff over money, why was it even worth it? Right.
Totally.
So, yeah. That's a powerful lesson.
I mean, amazing people that we met at Prosperity Camp, right? But they didn't have the solid marriages that I want, right? Like my wife and I, we're breaking the chains of divorce. Both of our parents have been married and divorced 5-6 times. Yeah. Here we are celebrating 18 years of marriage here in a couple of weeks, man. So
I love it, dude. You're living your message.
Yeah.
Living your message. It's amazing. And one of my passions is how do we have it all? Right? How do
Yeah.
you create it all? And I mean, that'd be a whole another thing you and I can go back and forth on. But
Totally.
Erik, hey, appreciate your time so much, man. I know everybody's loving listening to this, and I really appreciate you sharing your story. I know today it's easier to share it than it was 4 years ago when the very first time you wanted to.
Yeah.
Without that story, though, I mean, all the lessons are great. It's your story is what makes it so impactful that you could go from that life to this life. And you've inspired me. I know you've inspired people listening to our audience too. And it's awesome what you're doing, man. Thank you.
Oh man, thank you so much, dude. It was truly an honor to be on your show, man. Thank you so much.
Hey, everybody, listen, I know you love the episode. As always, all I ask is just share it. That's the only thing I ask of you. If you're new to the show, subscribe for sure. And then go connect with Erik. He's got all those free resources. Connect with him on Instagram. Appreciate you being here. We'll see you all soon.